The drone was giving me a headache, but I forced myself to concentrate on it. The sound grew louder. I could hear the faint rustle of footsteps again. It was even closer now. A chill ran down my spine. It was right behind me. I could feel its shadow looming over me. It couldn't be real. It just couldn't be. But it was. I screamed, spinning around and swinging my arms into empty space, trying to fend off whatever was lurking behind me. To my tearful frustration, it had vanished again, and the relentless drone had retreated to the living room. It was in the living room now. There was something there, something menacing. It was toying with me, like a predator that knew its prey was cornered. And now that I had acknowledged its presence, I realized it would soon strike. Well, Rachel wasn't about to let it take her without a fight. She forced herself up on trembling legs, stumbling to the office door and pushing it shut. She locked it, fully aware that it wouldn't offer much protection, and began to back away. Just as she did, the drone suddenly surged to a deafening pitch, and a heavy force slammed against the hollow wood door. Rachel jumped, stumbling back until she found herself cornered in her office with nowhere else to escape. The thing crashed against the door again. Rachel sank to the floor. The drone was furious. The door wouldn't hold for long. She hugged her knees, sobbing. The door shook with its fury. She closed her eyes, wishing for the nightmare to end. She hoped Mark would be okay without her. The office door began to splinter. The front door creaked open. Rachel the monster halted its relentless assault on the door, and Rachel's head snapped up. That was Mark's voice. "Oh God, no. Mark, don't come inside." Rachel screamed. "Leave. Lock the door behind you. Don't let it get to you, Rachel. What are you talking about?" Mark called back, dismissing her warnings. To Rachel's horror, the drone veered away from the office and headed toward the kitchen, where her unsuspecting husband was. She began to choke on her sobs as grief and panic battled in her throat. It was going to get Mark too. The monster was going to kill him, and then it would return to her to finish what it started. How long would it take for someone to notice they were missing? Would her coworkers realize after a few days of silence? Would her neighbors notice that Mark's car never moved? Would her parents call for a welfare check when she stopped replying to their texts? "Oh, honey. Hey, it's okay. You're okay. Can you open your eyes for me, please?" Slowly, disbelieving, Rachel opened her eyes. She lifted her head and saw Mark kneeling in front of her. He looked completely fine, the office door wide open, and the apartment was silent except for her confused sobs. How? Did the monster escape out the front door? Had Mark killed it? "Can I hold you, sweetheart?" Mark asked, sitting down on the floor in front of her. Rachel nodded, and Mark gently coaxed her into his lap. "There we go," he said softly. "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe. You're safe." Rachel wrapped her arms around him, still shaking as she buried her face in his shoulder. "Did you see it?" she asked him. "Did you see where it went?" "Mark, I thought it was going to kill me. I almost died." "Baby," Mark said softly, "I don't know if there was a monster. Do you think you might have been hallucinating?" What Rachel felt her thoughts freeze. Hallucinating. But the psychiatrist reduced your ziprasidone dose a couple of weeks ago, remember? "She warned us that your brain might react negatively to it," Mark continued. "She mentioned it could even trigger an episode, so we needed to keep an eye out for that. Do you think that might be what happened? Could you have been hallucinating because your brain isn't adjusting well to the lower dose?" In an instant, the hours of panic felt embarrassingly unnecessary. Rachel's panic faded away, replaced by a wave of hot shame that flushed her face and neck. "Oh my God," she mumbled into Mark's shirt. "I was definitely hallucinating, wasn't I?" She felt Mark's shoulders relax beneath her head in relief. "Yeah, Rach, I think so," he said, gently running his fingers through her hair. "But it's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of, remember? Schizophrenia is complicated. We couldn't have known for sure if lowering your medication would work, which is why we didn't stop it abruptly, right? Now we know. We'll get you back on your regular dose first thing tomorrow. Take a few days off work to help you adjust, and we'll let the psychiatrist know it didn't work out. It's okay. You're going to be fine." Rachel took deep breaths as Mark spoke, letting his words wash over her. His reassurance didn't completely erase her embarrassment, but it certainly helped. At least she knew Mark wasn't upset. "God, I hope the neighbors weren't home," she said after a moment, lifting her head. "I think I was screaming. I really thought something was there, Mark. I haven't had an episode like that in years." "Yeah, that sounds terrible," Mark agreed, leaning back on one hand. How about this, you clock out early, take a few days off, and tell your boss you're not feeling well. Then, you can relax on the couch while I whip up a big pot of chili with extra diced tomatoes. We'll spend the rest of the day watching cheesy reality TV and figuring out the perfect chili to Fritos ratio. Sound good? Rachel met Mark's gaze for a moment, considering, then leaned up and kissed him. I love you, she said simply. Mark chuckled and replied, I'll take that as a yes. After 10 minutes of emailing her boss and a few more kisses, Rachel was settled on the couch as promised, wrapped in the coziest blanket they owned. A British chef was shouting on the television, and Mark was bustling around the kitchen, opening drawers and cabinets while the ground beef sizzled on the stove. For the first time since she woke up, Rachel felt genuinely calm and at peace. Hey Rach, do you know where our can opener is? Mark called from his spot by the stove. Check the sink, Rachel replied. There was a clatter of dishes before Mark cheered softly, success, and turned on the faucet to wash the can opener. By the way, he asked, why's our creamer sitting next to the sink? Oh, that was my fault, Rachel said apologetically. I accidentally left it out this morning. That's just another sign I've been feeling disorganized for days. I didn't notice it either, Mark pointed out. And out of the two of us, I'm usually the one who catches these things. Don't be too hard on yourself, okay? Okay, Rachel chuckled, rolling her eyes. Mark was really going above and beyond to keep her from feeling bad, but it was sweet how much he cared. It was also nice not to be judged. She wished more people's partners could be like Mark. The conversation drifted into a comfortable silence. Then, a buzzing sound began to fill the office. The buzz gradually intensified into a drone. Rachel sighed. Realizing that the droning noise was just a hallucination clearly hadn't made it disappear. She took a deep breath, focused on the TV, and tried to tune it out. Fortunately, the droning faded away on its own. Still, it would be wise to keep track of her recurring hallucinations until she felt more stable. With that thought in mind, Rachel glanced toward the kitchen to tell Mark she was hearing things again, but then she noticed. He wasn't facing the stove. He wasn't looking at her either. He was staring toward the office. Rachel's blood ran cold. Time seemed to stretch as Mark finally turned to her and asked the one question she dreaded. Did you hear that?